Layer 1. Dribble penetration, circle movement.
Why start building the offense in the half court? Doesn't offense begin the moment your team gains possession of the ball? Shouldn't we begin with transition? Well, don't worry. By the end of the video, I'll dovetail your team's transition game into your half-court offensive game. And we'll do it without pausing to set up and without the defense knowing where transition ends and half-court offense begins. But for now, let's start with the half-court. Why start teaching with a 5-out set? Is this a 5-out offense? No, it's an offense that can be 5-out or 4-out or 3-out. But there are 3 reasons to begin teaching with a 5-out set. All players enter the half court on the perimeter. Therefore, every player, even your post players, should know how to react properly from any position on the perimeter. Within the read and react offense, the habits for perimeter players do not change when post players are added. So, perimeter training from 5-out is also perimeter training for 4-out 1-in and 3-out 2-in. In other words, when you're working on a 5-out set, you're not just training your perimeter players for 5-out, but also for 4-out and 3-out. Basketball is quickly becoming a game where all players can play the entire floor. 7-footers that can handle the ball on the perimeter are becoming the norm. So, developing your post players to have some perimeter skills and vice versa for your guards will help them both and your team as a whole.
North-south dribble penetration, circle movement.
The first set of reactions in the read and react offense centers around dribble penetration for this simple reason. Dribble penetration is the most common thing that players do at any level. Whether it's a pickup game on the street or a professional game on TV, players attack the basket off the dribble more than anything else. Another reason for building this set of habits first is that they take the longest to become true habits in your players. Therefore, they need the most drill and repetition time. My suggestion is to never stop drilling this penetrating pitch circle movement scenario. Circle movement training begins by establishing 5 spots on the NBA arc. It's important to be well behind the 19-foot arc. You'll see why when we get to the passing rules later in the video. In the first stages of teaching the offense, I like to mark the floor with distinct spots and keep the players very strict with their spacing. When the ball penetrates, the players without the ball will move from one spot to the next on this giant semicircle. The question is, how do the players know which way to rotate? Let's begin with the ball penetrating north-south, that is, as straight to the goal as possible. But even on a straight north-south penetration, the ball handler must go around his defender either right or left. Now, here comes the 2-player read and reaction habit that must be drilled in this layer. Each player without the ball must read which way the ball handler is driving, right or left. It helps to picture the ball handler turning a little circle around his defender. The little circle turns the big circle, and that tells the players without the ball which way they should move. If the ball handler goes right, then everyone moves to the next spot on their right. If the ball drives left, then everyone rotates left to the next spot. Let's watch what happens when the ball is driven toward the goal from each position on the floor. As you watch, notice this principle. When the ball drives north-south, the players without the ball move east-west.
Three-player drills to build two-player reaction habits. Natural pitch. Safety valve. Choose pitch or safety valve. Up top, choose pitch or dish. Opposite wing chooses pitch or dish. Layer 2, the baseline drive adjustment.
In the previous section, we looked at the basics of the circle movement, but I didn't show what would happen when the corners drive baseline. That's because the baseline drive creates a special situation. First, I'll show you the adjustments and why they're needed. Then we'll look at the simplicity and consistency that these adjustments create. In the 5-out set, if a corner drives baseline, the opposite corner should not circle up to the wing like the previous section would indicate. And this is the two-player read and reaction habit that must be drilled in this layer. The opposite corner must stay, or if he begins to move up to the wing, he must come back and fill the spot. The reason is that the opposite corner is the natural pitch window for the baseline penetrator. It's open most of the time, a straight-ahead pitch for the penetrator, and is therefore a high-priority window that must be filled. This high priority of the opposite corner applies to all sets. So even if the opposite corner is empty, it must be filled with any player on the opposite side of the floor. The remaining players without the ball need very little drilling for the baseline adjustment. They are still reacting by the circle movement habit from the previous layer. All that's needed are a couple of tiny adjustments. The opposite wing circle moves but stops a little short into what we'll call the 45-degree window. That's not much of an adjustment. The head of the key circle moves but stops a little short as well in what we'll call the 90-degree window. That's not much of an adjustment either. The same side wing circle moves into the safety valve position. No adjustment at all. In fact, the opposite corner becomes the only real adjustment that we make on a baseline drive. He'll be tempted to circle up to the wing like everyone else, but he must refill his corner for the natural pitch. When they all move at once, it looks like this. Notice the floor becomes balanced. Now for the good news. These windows that I just described, these spots where the penetrator looks for teammates, will never change for a baseline drive regardless of your formation. If you have 4 players out and 1 inside, and a wing drives baseline, these same spots will be filled. If you're playing 3 out, 2 in, and anyone drives baseline, these same windows will be filled every time.
Layer 3, pass and cut.
After dribble penetration, the second most common thing that players do is pass the ball to the right or left. This occurs so often that it must be turned into a scoring threat. Here are 3 reasons why. Most defenders think that if you pass the ball, then they've been successful at shutting down your ability to attack and score. They think that they've won the one-on-one battle, and as a result, they'll relax as soon as you pass. Sometimes they relax mentally, sometimes physically, sometimes both. This is prime time for you to attack offensively. And the best way is north-south with a basket cut. Moving backwards is harder on a defender than moving laterally. If you pass and stand, it allows your defender to cheat toward the ball and give defensive help. Your defender will cut off half of the court and half of the offensive opportunities for your teammate with the ball. On the positive side, if you pass and cut, you create good things for the ball handler and your other teammates regardless of whether you get the ball back or not. First, when you take your defender with you on the basket cut, then you've taken one of the immediate help defenders away from the ball. Now your teammate has more room to attack on your side. Second, your basket cut creates movement from your teammates who must fill the open spots. This occupies their defenders who are not as likely to help on the ball. And third, the teammate filling your spot has a chance to score because of your movement. This is one of the 3 scoring opportunities that we're going to look at. But before we look at these scoring opportunities, we must make sure that our passing does not screw up our spacing. With this in mind, here are the 2 basic rules for this layer. Rule number 1, when you pass to a teammate 1 spot away from you, then you must basket cut. Notice I said nothing about cutting when you skip pass. We'll cover that later. For now and forever, if you pass 1 spot away from you, then you must basket cut. If you stand still, you've screwed up. This is a rule we'll never break. And this is a 2-player reaction that must be drilled to the point of habit in this layer. Rule number 2, open spots are filled from the baseline up as quickly as possible. This will leave the basket cutter with an empty spot that he can fill after completing his basket cut. Now for the 3 scoring opportunities. Before a pass can be made, we must be sure the receiver is open. We do this by playing on the NBA arc while using the 19-foot arc as a read line. If the defender or the receiver is behind the arc, then your teammate is open and you can pass the ball. If your defender is over the 19-foot arc, then you must basket cut. There are no signals, just go. Using the 19-foot arc as a read line ensures a lot of space and makes it very difficult for the defender to recover and defend the rear cut. If the pass is not thrown, don't worry about it. Your basket cut leaves a spot open which must be filled by your teammate. Here comes scoring opportunity number 2. When filling an open spot, the player without the ball must view this movement as the great scoring opportunity that it is. Most defenders will react by sprinting to get denial position or even anticipate stealing the pass. As soon as your defender steps on or over the read line, rear cut. This is tough to defend. Again, if you don't get the ball, not to worry. Another teammate will be on his way to fill your spot. This is another two-player read and reaction that must be drilled to the point of habit in order for this layer to work. When the pass is made, scoring opportunity number 3 becomes available. It's the passer's opportunity. He can score on a front cut or a rear cut. Here again, the reads have been simplified. If the defender jumps toward the ball in order to get into denial position, and this is what 99% of defenders have been trained to do, then simply rear cut straight to the basket. Here's an example of using the defender's habits to your advantage. There's no need to jab step, V-cut, or make any contact. The defender has stepped out of your way, so take what he gave you and go straight for the basket. I emphasize making the pass right off the back foot of the defender. This gives the cutter the ball as soon as possible in case he needs to make a move based on help defense. If the defender doesn't jump to the ball, whether by design or because he's temporarily brain dead, then front cut him. Since your body's between your defender and the ball, the pass can be returned to you immediately. This pass, read the defender, front cut or rear cut, two-player reaction must be drilled to the point of being automatic and with no hesitation. You might wonder why I want to add any post slides at this time. Why not wait until the traditional post player has been introduced in the 4-out 1-in or 3-out 2-in sets? Because at this point in the progression, you'll begin to mix the first two layers of dribble penetration and pass and cut. And when you do, even though you're in a 5-out set, inside players are going to be created like this. A player passes and cuts, but immediately his receiver decides to drive. The cutter suddenly finds himself in the post area with dribble penetration occurring. Even though he's not a post player per se, he's now a post player because of his position. He'll have to know how to react to dribble penetration as if he was a post player. So, even if your team only plays 5-out, pass and cut, drive and kick, you'll still need to add these two elementary post slides. They're for everyone, not just the typical post player.
Post slide number 1.
Let's pretend you're in the posting area, ball side or weak side, and the ball penetrates. If the ball enters the lane above you, then step down to the short corner, separate from your defender, and look for the bounce pass. Don't wait to see if your defender helps. That would mean that you have to make two reads: the ball handler and your defender. So don't think and don't delay. Just react. As soon as the penetrator takes his first dribble, make your slide to the short corner. There's another read and reaction to this slide, but it's at the next level of development. Remember, this is a learning progression. Giving players too much too soon is about the only way we can screw this up. So we'll add the additional option later when we get to a 4-out 1-in set.
Post slide number 2.
If the ball penetrates the lane below you, then slide up to the free throw line elbow. Separate from your defender, create good spacing, and look for the pass. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're in the post on the ball side or the weak side. This completes the two-player read and reaction habit that needs to be drilled for this layer. Note how simple this read is for the player in the post. If the ball enters the lane above me, then I slide down to the short corner. If the ball enters the lane below me, then I slide up to the free throw line elbow or beyond. And I do both of these regardless of whether I'm ball side or weak side. Note that this is a simple two-player read and reaction that could be drilled anytime, preseason, during season, or off season. These two simple slides will fill the windows that we need in order for the offense to be consistent regardless of the set. Or, to say it another way, these two simple slides will fill the windows that keep the penetrator's passing options the same regardless of the set. Watch how the baseline drive exception that you just saw in the 5-out set has the same spots and windows filled when someone's in the post. This is another form of pressure relief. The honest attempt at penetration was stuffed, but the ball handler can safely get rid of the ball and fill out to one of the perimeter spots. You might say that this is a difficult read for players without the ball. I'm not going to disagree. It's a higher level read than the speed or power dribble. If you find it difficult, then consider teaching it like this. Since the player in the natural pitch window is the one who bails his teammate out of this kind of trouble 90% of the time, let's change his read from the ball to his defender. If his defender doesn't help on the drive, then his circle movement natural pitch is going to be blocked. If so, he reverses direction. Now let's look at the receiver's options. He could catch and shoot if there's been enough separation from his defender. It's a simple European 3 discussed on our passing video. If his defender is following him, he could catch, turn the corner, and drive towards the goal all in one motion. He's not the only one who is reversing his circle movement. If he were to catch and drive, then the other players who have circled up will also reverse and circle in the other direction. This change of direction is tough on the defense. Put a couple of these together in a row and watch the scoring opportunities open up. I tend to save this read for the more advanced levels, but it can be drilled into a habit at younger ages just like anything else. Sooner or later, you'll need it against good on-the-ball defenders.
3-player drills to build 2-player reaction habits. Circle reverse. Layer 8, back screens.
Why back screens? First of all, the back screen creates a lot of difficulty for the defense. The threat of a successful back screen is a layup, not a jump shot like a lot of other screens. Plus, the cut coming off the back screen is much like the basket cuts that are taught and drilled in the very first layer of this offense. So, your offensive players are familiar with it. Like the other habits, it will dovetail seamlessly into your previous layers. I especially like it because it's another weapon moving north-south that directly attacks the goal. The second reason for back screens is they come naturally from the movements of the read and react offense. The basket cut after any pass leads to the cutter filling out to an open spot on the perimeter. Typically, this act of filling out is the player's move to get open. But now, filling out with a back screen becomes a natural way to get your teammate open as well. Adding back screens after the basket cut is also my way of telling the players, you've had your chance to score, now be unselfish and give a teammate a chance to score. Don't hog the lane. If the pass didn't come during your basket cut, then leave the lane quickly and with a purpose. If you jog your way out of the lane, your defender will have a tendency to remain in help position and clog up the lane. If you fill out with a purpose, your defender will sense that something's going on and follow you out instead of remaining to help. And that's what we want him to do. But setting a back screen is not an entirely unselfish act. If you want to spring yourself open for a three-point shot, then set a good one, force the defenders to guard the cutter, and then shape up for the three-point shot.
How the back screen option solves problems.
Setting a back screen while filling out also solves a problem. Sometimes players make mistakes and fill out to the wrong side where there are no empty spots. I know that's hard to believe, but sometimes it happens. If it does, there's no need to panic, turn around, and vacate that side of the floor. Just set a back screen and take your teammate's place. In fact, players should view the back screen as a means to take someone's place on the perimeter. As an example, if your great post player is stuck on the perimeter, then set a back screen for him to get him inside. The defense might even switch, and you've created a big on little mismatch inside. Also, if you're in the process of setting a back screen and the teammate you're setting it for receives a pass, consider the following before you run away thinking you've made a mistake. First of all, he may want to use the back screen and will immediately pass in order to use it. If that's the case, then just wait. It will become the best situation for a back screen because his defender will momentarily relax when he passes, or he'll jump into denial position. Either way, he's a prime candidate for a successful back screen. Also, this situation might be a good time for a ball screen if that's part of your team's arsenal. Let the ball fake one way, wait for the adjustment by his defender, then choose your angle and work the pick and roll.
Two-player read and react habit.
Here's the two-man read and reaction habit for this layer. Pass, basket cut, and set a back screen as you fill out. Your teammate will be watching the ball. You've got to get his attention. Call his name and yell back screen. I don't care if the defense hears. If you don't get your teammate's attention, you'll look pretty foolish standing there waiting.
How to set the back screen.
Set the back screen by getting your feet in the air and landing on both. This serves two purposes. One, you're less likely to get an illegal screen called on you if both feet are firmly planted before contact is made by the defender. Second, timing is everything, and to get the right timing, my rule is the cutter cannot use the screen until he or she hears your feet hitting the ground. This keeps the cutter from going too soon. Also, hearing you yell back screen and waiting for your feet to hit the ground will give your teammate time to set up his defender. If the defender moves, then you can adjust the angle of your back screen. As an added advantage, you've approached the defender from the best angle possible directly behind him. The defender is blind from this angle.
Three-player drills to build two-player reaction habits. Pass, cut, back screen. Back screen, three-point option. Layer 9, multiple staggered screens.
Once all 5 players get in the act of passing, cutting, and back screening, you'll notice opportunities for multiple screens. In the beginning, they'll occur mostly by accident rather than by design. Here's how it happens. One of your players will pass and make a basket cut or receive a back screen and begin to basket cut, only to see a teammate cutting through the lane as well. Typically, the cutter thinks he's done something wrong and will stop his cut. But what he's actually stopped is a chance to set or use a second staggered screen. Be sure at this point to encourage your players to finish their cuts regardless of what the traffic looks like. Nothing's wrong. We're going to turn what looks like lemons into lemonade. Let's look at how this occurs in detail. Number 1 passes to number 2. Basket cuts, fills out away from the ball, and sets a back screen on number 3. In the meantime, number 2 has already passed the ball and is finishing his basket cut with the same intention, to fill out away from the ball. Number 3 is the lucky recipient of this accident. Number 3 receives a back screen from number 1 and finds a second staggered screen courtesy of number 2. Now, here's a unique thing about the read and react system. Number 2 might not even be aware that he's providing a second staggered screen for number 3. In fact, even number 3 might not spot the second staggered screen. It doesn't matter. The defender of number 3 must still get through 2 staggered screens. Let's look at number 2's screen. Eventually, he'll be aware that he's providing a second screen and perhaps even stop to provide a traditional pick. But in the beginning, when he's still learning, his pick is more or less a brush screen, but it's still effective. If any cutter can simply run his defender off his teammate, whether that teammate realizes it or not, an effective screen has been set.
Unplanned, multiple staggered screens.
Watch how easy it is to get 3 staggered screens. For the smart cutter who can see these screens developing, there's a lot of scoring options waiting on him. As the cutter's basketball IQ goes up, he or she can be taught how to play off these screens depending on how they're defended. I'll not go into all the ways they can be defended and the corresponding offensive counters, but you can get them from the last chapter of our video, Scoring Without the Ball. I mentioned earlier in the video that the read and react system allows different levels of players to play together without hindering the better players. Let me use this layer to illustrate. Let's pretend players 1 and 2 are high-level players who can spot, use, and score off multiple screens. But players 3, 4, and 5 are still learning. All they know how to do is pass, cut, and set an occasional back screen. Players 1 and 2 can use the back screens and basket cuts of players 3, 4, and 5 without being on the same mental page, skill level, or even the same teaching level in the read and react system. Some of the good basketball you'll see will be by design, but some of it will be by accident. But who can tell, and furthermore, who cares? What if you're using a 4-out, 1-in set? No problem. When a back screen is set on a perimeter player, the cutter is guaranteed a second staggered screen by the post player, whether the post player recognizes it or not. If the post is on the same side of the court as the back screen, then the second screen is almost immediate. If the post is away, then the second screen comes late and in many cases turns into a down screen or a cross screen. What about 3-out, 2-in? Any back screen on a perimeter player almost automatically turns into a triple staggered screen. A post player or a perimeter player could set the initial back screen. It won't matter. There will still be 3 screens available most of the time. And what did you, as a coach, have to do to get this kind of action? Did you have to spend the hours and weeks necessary to teach a set play that has 3 staggered screens in it? No. At this level of the read and react offense, all you need to do is stick 2 in the post, pass, cut, and back screen. That's it. If you only knew how many coaching clinics I attended in order to pick up just one good play that had a triple staggered screen in it, and then how much practice time I spent drilling that play only to have it stopped because one player, just one, missed his assignment. And then, by the time the team could execute it consistently, all of my opponents had it scouted. I hope you can see why I'm so excited about the read and react system. With a few 2-man reaction habits and a change of formation, we're able to constantly get double and triple staggered screens. And most importantly, this kind of high-level action can't be scouted.
Layer 10, Advanced Post Reactions.
There are a lot of reasons you might put one player in a post and keep 4 on the perimeter. You might be hiding a weakness, or you may be taking advantage of a strength. I'm going to leave that decision up to you and make no assumptions. I'll go through this the same way I've done everything else, layer by layer, from basic to advanced. Once you have a player inside, ask the remaining perimeter players to bounce the floor and leave the corners empty. When asked to do so, they'll take these 4 positions, 2 guards and 2 wings every time. These are their new spots on the perimeter, a total of 6 spots if you include the corners. The 2 guard spots should be familiar. They're the 45 and 90-degree positions on a baseline drive. Next, let's strengthen the post reactions to dribble penetration. The basics were covered in the first fundamental layer. Now, let's put some meat on the bones.
2-player read and react habit.
This is the 2-player read and react habit that must be drilled for this layer. If dribble penetration comes into the lane above the line of the post, his first priority is to get out of the way. Step down to the short corner and give the penetrator a chance to get to the rim. If the post defender stays in the lane to stop the penetration, then the step down by the post creates space and separation from his defender. Catch and shoot the short 5-footer or meet the bounce pass, step through, and get to the rim. So far, this has been just a review of basic post slides that we covered earlier, right? Well, here's the new read and reaction for this level. If the post defender follows the post out of the lane, then the post steps behind him and toward the goal, a miniature rear cut. Regardless of whether the post is ball side or weak side, when dribble penetration occurs below the line of the post reaction is to slide up the lane line. In other words, get out of the way and let your teammate get to the rim. If you have 3-point shooting range, then slide there. Otherwise, slide up to the elbow, and stay in your shooting range. Also, by the time your players get to this level, they can begin to view the post slides as part of basic circle movement. A good example of this can be seen when the ball penetrates above the post from the same side wing. The step down to the short corner can continue in a circle movement that lands the post behind the penetrator in the safety valve position. Another example occurs when the post is on the weak side away from the ball and the wing penetrates the lane above him. His first fundamental slide is to the short corner, but if he continues in a circle movement, his slide gives him a chance to get the ball while sliding behind the defense under the go. If he doesn't get the ball, his circle movement will land him in the wing's safety valve position. Now that the post reactions to penetration are complete, I want to point out something unique to this offense. Having one or even two post players in the read and react system does not clog up the lane and prevent or discourage dribble penetration from the perimeter. Post players in the read and react system are only illusions when it comes to penetration. Remember, as soon as someone puts the ball on the floor in a north-south direction, the post is sliding down or up, getting out of the way. The perimeter players don't have to wait for the post to be empty in order to drive. They can take what the defense gives them whenever they want, because your post players are trained by habit to instantly get out of the way.
3-player drills to build 2-player reaction habits. Post defender follows. Post rear cuts. Step down to short corner and circle to safety valve. Layer 11, post blocking.
The first way to use the post is the simplest. The post can create scoring opportunities by simply setting screens for the cutters and then shaping up to the ball in the lane. If he catches in the lane, he can shoot. Otherwise, he doesn't. If you want to keep it simple, limit the post to one side only. Perhaps if he's right-handed, he'll be more comfortable shaping up in the lane from the left side. Or perhaps you want to keep one particular side of the floor open for layups. Think about using this when your post player is not a strong back-to-the-basket scorer. What new adjustments must the perimeter players make now that you've gone to a 4-out set? The good news is, none. That's part of the beauty of read and react. The perimeter players can play the same game they learned in the first fundamental layer, but now the inside player creates two nice things for the perimeter players.
Perimeter opportunities created by the post player.
First, the corners are empty, which means no help is coming from the baseline side if the wings drive baseline. This brings up a simple read for a smart wing player along with your two-man read and react habit that should be drilled in this layer. Use the post defender's position as a clue for which way to drive. If the post is played on the top side, then drive baseline. Your post player's reaction of sliding up the lane helps block and seal the post defender from helping. Vice versa, if the post is defended on the baseline side, then the wing should drive middle. The slide down to the short corner allows the post to block and seal his defender out of the play. The second nice thing that an inside player creates for those on the perimeter is a fixed and reliable screen. The post could simply wait on the cutters, or he could step out and back screen their defenders. Now, if the perimeters are setting back screens on each other, the post becomes a second or third staggered screen for the cutters. The post actually provides a third benefit, but we haven't gotten to it yet. He becomes a natural pin screener to to set up the skip pass used to counter sagging, helping, weak side defenders. We'll get to that later.
Layer 12, post passing.
The next set of habits to build when adding a post player to the mix involves the reactions of the perimeter players when they pass to the post. There's 3 good reasons to build these habits into your players. Pass and cut was established in an earlier fundamental layer of the offense. We're not going to ask the players to violate a reaction that we've already drilled to the point of habit. If a player feeds the post and stands, then the rest of the players usually stand and watch as well. The post player will feel the pressure to go one-on-one whether he should or not. And the third reason to have attacking cuts by the passer is to occupy the non-post defenders. If the passer cuts, then everyone on the perimeter moves as well, along with his or her defenders. Otherwise, if we pass and stand, then it becomes easier for perimeter defenders to pay attention to the situation, help down, and double team the post.
2-player read and react habit.
Here are the 2-player read and react habits that must be drilled into your players in order to use this layer of the offense. And just like the other 2-player habits that we've added, these will fold seamlessly into your previous layers without compromising spacing, balance, or a previous habit. The Laker cuts are the first habits that I teach when a perimeter player feeds the post. Upon first consideration, you might say that they're simply basket cuts, and you would be correct, because pass and cut is an already established habit in our players that we're not going to break just because they pass to the post. Let's look at the details. The passer cannot basket cut directly to the hole. He must go around the post player. In order to ensure space between the post and the cutter, the Laker cut low on the baseline side must go below the big block. The Laker cut high must go above the free throw line elbow. If you don't emphasize the spacing, the post defender can guard the post and the cutter at the same time. Remember the emphasis on spacing in the first layer of the offense? Well, here it is again. And we can't let a new habit violate one of the fundamental principles of the offense.
Note to youth coaches.
By the way, these 2 basket cuts could be taught earlier in the sequence of building the offense, especially if I'm teaching a youth level team. Since I'm not going to teach the other 2 cuts at such a young age, I wind up making the Laker cuts a part of their pass and cut layer. They don't see them as separate cuts or some kind of exception. They view it as part of their most basic rule. If I pass, I must basket cut, regardless of where I pass.
Scoring with the Laker cuts.
On the first or elementary defensive level, you'll catch the defender flat-footed and score because it's just a hard basket cut. Let's face it, most defenders are used to players passing and standing, even in the pros. On the second level, the defense will defend hard until you get to the lane. Then they have a tendency to relax. Sometimes they relax because they're changing to weak side defense. And sometimes they relax because they think they've stopped the cut once their man gets to the lane and doesn't get the ball. Regardless, finish your cut with your eyes on the ball and be aware that you may be receiving the pass late on the other side of the goal. You might be shocked at how many layups your team gets this way. On the third and more advanced level, your defender may be trained to step in front of your initial cut and physically stand you up. Don't fight the contact. In the read and react offense, you have the freedom to take advantage of whatever the defense gives you. So use the contact as a signal to change directions. If you try to Laker cut high and receive contact, then change direction and Laker cut low. If you try to cut low and get stood up, then change to a high Laker cut. Remember, the defense can take away some things, but they can't take away everything.
How the Laker cuts create scoring opportunities for the other perimeter players.
What about the other three perimeter players? Well, nothing's changed from the first fundamental layer. They must fill the vacant spot. This creates movement on the perimeter. This movement occupies the perimeter defenders and discourages them from helping down onto the post. And if one of them does help down onto the post, the movement of the perimeters will create better passing targets for the post. Be aware that when you begin to move along the perimeter to fill the next spot, it can pull your defender across the read line. A basket cut in this situation is devastating and won't harm a thing other than your opponent. Someone will fill your spot, and if you don't receive the pass from the post, you'll simply fill out like you learned in the first layer.
The east-west cuts after feeding the post.
So, at this point, the player who feeds the post can basket cut to the right or to the left. But what about east-west? This is one of the reasons for leaving the corners empty. If your defender follows your pass and double teams the post, then relocate to the corner for the return pass. Catch and shoot, catch and drive, catch, refeed the post and cut. There's good basketball here. If you want to know all your one-on-one options versus a recovering defender in this particular situation, then pick up our one-on-one offense video. All of the moves and reads are dissected in detail. One more cut is available to you after feeding the post. I call it the X cut because it needed a name and I couldn't think of a good one. You'll set a screen for the guard above you, but that's just misdirection. Your real purpose is to set the screen and cut hard down the lane for your scoring opportunity.
Summary of the 4 read and react cuts when feeding the post.
Let me sum up the habits for the player who passes to the post. And again, these are the reactions that must be drilled until there's no thinking on the part of the players. He could basket cut below the post. He could basket cut above the post. He could cut east-west and relocate in the corner. Or he could cut east-west and screen for a perimeter teammate. By the way, these are the rules and habits for feeding the post from anywhere. If you're in the guard position and you feed the post, you still have a choice of 4 cuts. 2 basket cuts, right or left, and 2 east-west cuts. An X cut in each direction. Note that there are not any other directions for the passer to go. I guess he could pass to the post and stand, but that would mean he doesn't know how to play. As a coach, when I read him standing still, then I react by subbing him out of the game. It's called read and react coaching. No thinking, just sub.
3-player drills to build 2-player reaction habits. Choose from 4 cuts when feeding the post. Layer 13, 3 out, 2 in dribble penetration.
The good news about the 3-out, 2-in set is that there's nothing new to learn. Everything that's needed to play from this set has already been learned by your players. So, why consider a 3-out, 2-in set? First, the obvious reasons. You may have two very strong post players that create a lot of offense by being around the basket. Maybe your post players are good at scoring with their backs to the basket. Maybe your post players are good passers and you like to go inside with the ball and allow your perimeters to move without the ball. Maybe your post players are great rebounders and you want them near the basket as much as possible. Or maybe it's a negative reason. Perhaps their perimeter skills are so poor that it's best to keep them inside to cut down on turnovers. Now, let me give you an advantage to 3-out, 2-in that you might not have considered. Your three perimeter players have a lot of room to dribble penetrate. At first, you might not think of 3-out, 2-in as being a great set for penetrators, but it is. Remember, the post players in the lane are only illusions. In the read and react offense, they're going to slide out of the way as soon as you put the ball on the floor. Their trained reactions slide them out of the way in order to give the perimeter players room to get to the goal. Let's look at penetrate and pitch from all three perimeter positions. Since the wings are mirror images of each other, this boils down to just two positions. One drives from up top, and two drives from the wing.
3-out, 2-in, top drives gut.
When north-south penetration from up top is successful, there are 5 possibilities. If no defender helps, then take it all the way to the hole. If the wing defender helps across, then make the natural pitch. If the post defender stays to help, then bounce pass to your post. If the other post defender helps, then bounce pass to that post. If the wing defender and same side post defenders stay with their men, but help comes from the other post, and the weak side wing defender drops down to cover the weak side post, then stop, reverse pivot, and throw back to your safety valve for the open shot.
Three-out, 2-in, wing drives baseline.
From either wing, if you drive baseline, the possibilities are, if no defender helps, then take it all the way to the hole. If help comes from the opposite wing, then make the natural pitch to the opposite corner. If help comes from the ball side post, then hook pass up the line to your 90 degree. If help comes from the weak side post, then pitch to your 45 degree window. If there's good help in rotation, you'll know it because you won't be able to get to the goal, and the 90, 45, and straight ahead natural pitch will be covered. That tells you that your safety valve behind you is open. It's that simple.
Three-out, 2-in, wing drives middle.
From either wing, if you drive middle, your possibilities are, if no defender helps, then take it all the way to the hole. If help comes from your closest perimeter teammate, then you'll have a natural pitch to the 45 degree window. Now, you might ask why your teammate up top doesn't circle move all the way to the wing. This is a slight adjustment that's needed in order to ensure that someone would be back on defense if there's a turnover by the ball handler while driving middle. If help comes from the opposite wing, then you have another natural pitch to your wing buddy in the opposite corner. Simple circle movement. If help comes from the opposite post, then a straightaway, simple bounce pass gives your post a layup. A lob to the rim for a dunk will work, but I'll leave that for you to decide. If help comes from the same side post, then a bounce pass in the gap leads to a score. Sometimes the defense helps, rotates, and wins. As you saw earlier, the same side post can complete his circle movement and move behind the wing for a safety valve.
Penetrate and pitch, the next level.
It's now time to take advantage of the read and react system and move this penetration game to the next level. Traditionally, players who can penetrate must go through the following steps to pitch the ball. 1. Notice that they're being stopped from getting to the goal. 2. Look for an open teammate who could be anywhere. And 3. Make the pass to an unrehearsed spot at an unrehearsed angle. Now, consider the penetrator in the read and react system. He knows exactly where all his teammates will be, regardless from where he drives. He doesn't have to search for the open teammate. All he has to do is see where the defensive help comes from in order to know where to pass. Furthermore, this pass has been practiced and rehearsed time and time again. You be the judge. Which way gives the penetrator a better chance at succeeding?
There are no new 3-man drills for this layer. All needed habits were installed in previous layers. Layer 14, countering helping defense with the pin and skip.
This layer of read and react could be taught much earlier if you see the need. There are no habits or skills contained in it that requires you to wait before teaching it. In fact, at the higher levels of basketball, it may need to be taught right away while you're building the first layer. Here's why. Put yourself in the place of your opponents. How would you defend all the basket cuts and dribble penetration threats of the read and react offense? If I were your opponent, I would overemphasize my weak side help defensive positions. Now, back to the offensive side of the equation. How would you counter your opponent's defensive adjustment? It's like a chess game. You've got to have an answer other than, well, we'll play harder. My answer is the pin screen and skip pass. Since we started teaching from a 5-out set, I'll begin with 5 out and then proceed to 4 out and 3 out. Here's the 2-player read and react habit for this layer. Even though it involves 3 offensive players, it's still a 2-man read. And unlike the other habits of the offense, the 2 players on the weak side are not reading and reacting to the ball. They're reading their defenders and the situation. Here's what they're reading. On the weak side, there's typically going to be 2 weak side defenders in the lane, one low, one high. One defender is going to be a little closer to the ball than the other. The question is, on which of the 2 defenders should we set the pin screen? Well, answer this question. Which of the 2 defenders has the longest recovery to their man? It's this one, the one closest to the ball. This is the defender that they're going to pin screen. The weak side player whose defender is closest to him will cut hard to set the pin screen for his teammate. Notice I said cut hard because I want his defender to go with him. If he makes his pin screen look like a hard basket cut, as if he's flashing to score, then his defender is much more likely to go with him. Now the pin screener is occupying 2 defenders at once, his own defender and the one that he's setting the pin screen on. He should set the pin screen by placing his back toward his teammate and then yell pin screen or pin or whatever in order to get the ball handler's attention. His other teammate, who will be catching the skip pass, must get the attention of the eyes of the ball handler. This is accomplished by performing an unbasketball-type movement, the PE class jumping jack. When the skip pass is thrown, the receiver has the options of catching and shooting, catching and driving, or catching and feeding the post. You can find pointers on reading the recovering defender on our video, Scoring Without the Ball. I'm not going to go into that kind of detail here. Now let's look at what's happening with the pin screener. After setting the pin screen, his job is to seal the next defender and open up to the ball. So as the ball is in the air, remember that you've got a possible post feed for a layup as soon as the ball hits your hands. And by the way, this is a natural way to transition from 5 out to 4 out 1 in, and from 4 out 1 in to 3 out 2 in.
Pin screen and skip pass when your set is 4 out, 1 in.
The pin, screen, and skip becomes even easier when a post player is inside. If the post is away from the ball, that is, on the weak side, then he's a natural pin screener. Just hunt the weak side defender and yell pin screen. If you're the post player, just consider that sometimes this is the best way to get the ball to yourself deep inside the lane. On the other hand, if the post is on the ball side, then the pin screen must be set by one of the 2 weak side perimeter players, just like I described in the 5 out set. Don't overlook that this scenario switches the team from a 4 out 1 in to a 3 out 2 in set. I know the other post could step out onto the perimeter or back screen his way out onto the perimeter, and your set would remain 4 out 1 in. But I like flowing from one set to another in a single possession. I think it makes things really hard on the defense.
Pin screen and skip pass when your set is 3 out, 2 in.
When you're using the 3 out 2 in set, you have 2 natural pin screeners already stationed in the post. In fact, I challenge you to make 2 pin screen and skips in a row. Watch how the defense breaks down. I can't tell you exactly where your scoring opportunity will be, but I can guarantee you that there will be one. 2 in a row are like 2 consecutive penetrating pitches in a row. They seem to wreak havoc with the defense. Defensive breakdowns occur that your players can take advantage of. This is a great lead-in for the chapter on zone offense because the pin and skip is made for zones. See it again in the next chapter.
3-player drills to build 2-player reaction habits. Pin screen and skip. Layer 15, attacking zone defenses.
Without fail, the question always comes up, what about zones? But it's asked like this, what about zones? You can't attack zones the same way that you attack a man-to-man, can you? The answer is, yes you can. Now, I know there are many ways to attack a zone, just like there's many ways to attack a man-to-man. Some coaches have a shoot from the outside philosophy, some move the ball, some move players, some screen the zone, some attack from the baseline, just to name a few. Many coaches simply have a big notebook of zone plays they've collected over the years. And I don't want to just add another play to your playbook. I want your players to be able to use the same habits and skills they've already learned regardless of what the defense does. Now, at this point, we've been training players to attack a man-to-man defense. But think about this with me. Most man-to-man defenses are not true man-to-man. There are 3 players playing man with 2 zoning, or even something like 1 defender playing man-to-man on the ball and the other 4 zoning. Now, isn't that pretty much what a zone defense is? If it is, then we already have the tools needed to attack the zone. When I put this offense together, I didn't want a separate set of habits to teach the players just because the opponent had switched from man to a zone. So, the question became, how can we use the read and react man-to-man habits that are instilled in your players to attack a zone successfully? And the answer is, let's take those already established read and react habits and simply make a few adjustments.
Zone adjustment number 1, pass and seam cut.
The first adjustment to make involves our pass and cut habits. The zone is going to take away almost any chance for a layup from a simple give and go. However, zones have cracks and holes in their seams. Our adjustment is to change the basket cut to a seam cut. In other words, when you pass and cut, don't stick your head under the basket. Instead, slow up for a moment in the seam of the zone or for a window where the ball can see you. If you want to stay inside and play in the post for a while, then fine. But otherwise, just like an ordinary basket cut, fill out to an open spot.
Zone adjustment number 2. Add the short corners as spots.
The second adjustment involves the short corners. Emphasize to your players that the short corners, which are on the baseline behind the zone, are places where cutters can stop. The zone can be attacked from behind in this manner. If a player receives the ball in this position and there's no chance to score, point out that it's like a baseline drive. All the same windows should be filled by his teammates. The opposite corner, 45 degree, 90 degree up the line, and the safety valve.
Zone adjustment number 3. Penetrate and pitch even more.
Dribble penetration is exactly the same as it is against a man-to-man. Many coaches use the terminology attack the gaps, and that's fine. But doesn't this boil down to attacking the defender in front of you one-on-one, just like against a man-to-man? But now, with the read and react habits, our players will circle move and slide into their predetermined positions the same way they do against a man-to-man. The only adjustment that's needed is to point out to the players that in a zone, the help defense is already in position, waiting to stop their penetration. That fact shouldn't stop penetration, it ought to encourage it. Penetrate against the zone and you're almost guaranteed 2 defenders playing the ball, sometimes 3. That's going to leave a lot of teammates open, and they're going to be in the same familiar windows as they were against a man-to-man.
Zone adjustment number 4. The safety valve advantage.
While we're talking about dribble penetration, it's important to point out another weakness of zones that we can take advantage of. Each defender in a zone has a zone area for which he alone is responsible. Let me illustrate how that's a weakness. If our ball handler tries to penetrate the gap, or to use read and react terms, penetrate north-south, the zone defender in that area goes with the ball handler. But because of our circle movement habits, we have a safety valve circling into the spot behind the penetrator. My question is, who covers the safety valve? Isn't the safety valve in the same zone area as the defender of the ball? How can that defender cover 2 players at once? He can't. And if the closest zone defender rotates to pick him up, then we have the zone being stretched out of its comfort zone. Each pass from that point on forces defensive rotation until the zone is out of shape. At that point, good things will open up for the offense.
Zone adjustment number 5. Pin and skip.
The pin and skip might be the best single weapon against any zone. And if you've implemented the previous section against a man-to-man, then all it takes to use it against a zone is to point out the following to your players. All zones are ready-made for the pin and skip. Regardless of the zone formation, when the ball is on one side of the floor, 2 weak side defenders will appear on the other side. One of them will be low, protecting the weak side basket, and the other will be high. Their positions might vary a little bit depending on the type of zone or the team running it, but they'll be there, and one of them will be begging you to pin screen him. Put 2 pin and skips back to back and watch the zone lose its shape. Or how about pin and skip, catch, penetrate, pin and skip. As soon as the zone begins to chase your players, dribble penetration opportunities will become available. You don't have to have 5 great 3-point shooters on the floor to beat a zone. That's a myth, although I probably wouldn't turn them down.
Attacking zones with a familiar continuity of options.
Now, I know for many of you, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. As an example, I've heard coaches in clinics talk about creating gaps in the zone and training their players to penetrate those gaps. My question was always, then what? If the penetrator makes it to the goal, great. But what if he doesn't? What then? Try to beat 2 or 3 defenders, force a shot against numbers, hope your teammates move intelligently into open spots in order to bail you out of trouble. This is where the same man-to-man read and react habits come back to help you against zones. The read and react habits complete the missing parts in this picture. A player can penetrate and know exactly where all of his or her teammates will be. If the penetrator passes the ball, then he knows where to go. He can remain in the seams of the zone and look for the ball, or he can set a pin screen on the weak side, or he can fill to an open spot on the perimeter or the short corner. The read and react system provides a confident continuity of options for your players. As long as they don't turn the ball over, there's almost no way to screw it up.
Final zone offense thoughts.
I've seen a lot of good zone offense principles during my 25 years in coaching. Make the zone shift and then reverse sides of the floor. Dribble, stretch a zone defender and throw back where you came from. Have an alternating current with your passing. Pass, pass, hold and look. Pass, pass, hold and look, etc. Get the ball to your best attacker and passer in the seam of the zone. Overload one side of the zone. Attack from the baseline. Dribble, drag out of the corners and throw back to the short corner. Flash into the seams after the zone shifts, not as the zone shifts. Attack the gaps, pitch, and make the extra pass. All of these are good, but if your players are playing by read and react habits, you'll see each of these principles happen at some point in time, whether the players know them or not. When they happen, you can point them out, positively reinforce them, and little by little develop the basketball IQ of your players.
There are no new 3-man drills for this layer. All needed habits were installed in previous layers. Layer 16. Seamless transition from fast break to secondary break to half-court offense.
This section is optional, of course. Drilling for a seamless transition is not necessary to take advantage of the read and react system. And that's why I put this chapter near the end. It's icing on the cake, so to speak. But for me, this fits philosophically. Even though we coaches must break the game down to its smallest parts in order to teach the fundamentals, shouldn't our goal be to tie everything back together? And shouldn't that bundle include our transition game? You'll have to see the video on read and react drills to get each step of the build-up, but here's the general idea. As I stated in the beginning, my goal is to have your team's transition game fold seamlessly into the half-court offensive game without a pause, without the defense knowing where one ends and the other begins. This keeps pressure on the defense whether you fast break or not. My goal with this seamless transition is to never give the defense a chance to regroup, take a deep breath, or receive instructions from their coach. Those defenders better get back, stop the ball, get in help position, and be ready for anything. Because the read and react system allows the offense to attack from the moment we get our hands on the ball. And we're going to take whatever the defense gives us as soon as we can. Once your players have absorbed even the first, most basic layer, you can begin to drill it full court. Here's how I do it. The players move in a circle so that anyone could get the rebound. I begin with letting the rebounder dribble all the way down the court and pretend that our fast break failed. He'll stop and keep his dribble at either of the two wings or head of the key. Now, I know that many of you have a different philosophy about who brings the ball up the court. Again, this is not fixed in stone. You adjust it to your own philosophy. However, I'm talking about a progression. And during practice, this is a good way to drill the real game-like ball handling skills into all of your players. Now, back to the drill. Those without the ball must run the floor in one of the other 4 lanes. When each player hits the arc, they make basket cuts or at least cut the lane. This is meant to encourage and simulate a primary 2-on-1 or 3-on-2 fast break. During the drill, the players will run as if to score with the primary fast break, but instead they'll pretend to not be open and complete their cuts through the lane. From this point on, your players are in familiar territory. They've just completed a basket cut. And like every other layer in the offense, we are dovetailing our transition into a layer of the offense that players are already familiar with. What have they been trained to do after basket cuts? Fill out to an open spot. In this manner, we're immediately playing half-court offense without backing up, setting up, or waiting for everyone to get down the floor. Point out to the players that this basket cut and fill an open spot is their move to get open in the half-court offense. I don't want them to stop in the lane, change directions, and fill out the same side. I want them to finish their cut through the lane for several reasons. If they stop and change directions, they will wear out their legs over the course of the game. Also, what does it accomplish? Nothing. Finishing their cut through the lane and filling out on the opposite side makes their defenders follow them and change sides of the floor as well. If your defender is concentrating on you and your movement without the ball, then he's less likely to guard the situation, that is, be in the correct helping position to stop the ball. Changing sides of the floor by cutting through the lane allows you the chance to hang your defender on another cutter or run him into one of his own teammates. As the layers of development increase, players will notice that they can actually stop and set screens for each other. If you have post players that you don't want on the perimeter, then they can set a screen, shape up to the ball, and remain in the post straight out of transition. If the first one or two players down the court are much faster than the trailers, they'll find that as they're filling out to their open spot, they'll have a chance to back screen one or both of the trailers. By now, this movement of basket cut, fill out, set a back screen should be such a well-ingrained habit that I would be surprised if you needed to do little more than point it out. And what a great secondary break option it makes. And what did it take to add the primary break and secondary break to your half-court offense? Was this a huge system to be broken down, taught, and drilled, only to take up more precious practice time? No. All that was needed to add this icing to your cake is to tell your players that they must complete their transition down the floor by sticking their head under the basket or somewhere in the lane and fill out to the other side. From that point forward, your players are on familiar ground and playing with familiar habits.
Collapsing time frames.
This drill can be turned into a conditioner as well. The players must make a certain number of trips, scoring with a different option on each trip. If they miss the shot, then they play it like a defensive rebound. If they make the shot, they must treat it as if their opponents made the shot and get it out of bounds and up the floor with whatever method you require. I would much rather have 4 or 5 trips like this that condition my players' lungs and add some ball handling and train my team's offensive system. To me, it easily beats running 4 or 5 sprints, which accomplish nothing more than conditioning. Eventually, I add the verbal press, and the ball handler must stop where he is and run the press breaker. Breaking the press does not mean you should stop attacking the goal, and that's what I want to reinforce. Our offense must be seamless, regardless of what happens.
Next step, add dummy defense.
The next level adds dummy defenders who are waiting at the half court. They play the best possible position defense without touching the ball. For the defenders, this is shell defense time. In fact, your emphasis might be on the defense, and your offense is simply providing a game-like shell for the defenders. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The next level is to make the waiting defensive team play live once the offense comes across the half court. And of course, the last level is live scrimmage. Again, in the Drills for Read and React video, I'll spend more time on every drill associated with this progression. For now, this should give you an idea of how to build the offense seamlessly from defensive rebound to half-court basket.
Layer 17, flowing naturally from set to set.
The hardest team to guard would be one that has players who are skilled inside and outside and can flow from 5 out to 4 out to 3 out in a single possession. The reason I've included this short section is to let you know when I think the Read and React offense is in. The offense is in when a team can flow effortlessly from one set to the next, depending on how they're defended and what the opportunities are. By no means am I saying that you can't be successful by using only one set. But imagine a team that could run all 3 sets in a single possession without having to stop and reset things. Wouldn't this be the ultimate team to have? Watch as we drill this team to flow from one set to the next.
There are no 3-man drills to build flow from set to set. Drills to build flow from habit to habit or layer to layer are on the Drills DVD. Conclusion.
If you notice, there's nothing out of the ordinary about each individual layer. The strength and beauty of the offense lies in the combination of these layers, the synergy that's created when your team moves and plays together like a coordinated school of fish. This kind of teamwork is what attracts fans and players alike, and they both describe it with the same phrase. Now that's basketball.